Actually, hold on. It would help if I unmuted us. Good thing we didn't get into the show proper yet.
There we go.
So many things going on at once, but let's get into it. Hey everybody, welcome to You Have to Watch This podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And Devin is on vacation this week, so joining us from Allentown, Pennsylvania, from the Rum Runnas Podcast is our friend Jared.
Hi everybody, how you doing? Glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. So Jared, tell us a little bit about the Rum Runnas Podcast for anyone out there who doesn't know what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah. Well, the Rum Runnas Podcast is so we've been going on for around 3 years now. And what it is it started as kind of like a grab bag, random comedy thing. And it's evolved into a comedy news show where we read the clickbait news articles so that you don't have to. So if you've ever been on Facebook or been on, any sort of internet and seen a title like, Dingo eats 70-year-old, and you're like, what? We read those kind of stories. So anything that makes you kind of stop and second guess, that's what we do. So we cover all of that. And then recently we've expanded out to be a networking company, tons of shows. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I didn't know what Rum Runners Podcast was until I pulled the graphic for today. So I'm kind of interested in hearing the clickbaity news. Tell us a little bit about Rum Runners Podcast Network.
All right. Well, Rum Runners Podcast Network really started off where predominantly me and my co-host Kyle were like, how can we make this a career? Like we enjoy doing this. There needs to be a way to make this a legitimate business. And what we decided was we kept making shows. Like every time a thought pops into our head, we were like, let's just make a new show. Let's do that. Let's bring another person on. And next thing we knew, we had Rum Runners, we had Dark Rum Podcast, we had Talk Shonen, we have Norwal's Nightmares. We're currently working on another one that just kind of came into fruition, Thursday. We had the thought for it, so we have yet another show that we're doing, and we just and through our time of doing this, 3 years, we've made every single mistake that a podcaster makes. Like if you've thought about it or you've watched one of those 10 mistakes that everyone that gets into podcasting doesn't know they're making, we did those. So we were like, you know what? We have a lot of real world experience when it comes to this medium. What can we do to try to help other people so that they're not making our mistakes? And then we quickly realized we're like, okay, we can become friendly with people. We can, be on shows. But it's not, there's no sense of connection. And that's really what we wanted. We wanted a sense of connection between everybody. So we were like, hey, what if we, luckily we partnered up with a media company that is helping us do this. But we were given the ability to say, hey, let's open it up to shows that aren't just us, sitting in front of these microphones. Let's open it up to other people, and let's give people a community where people that aren't Joe Rogan and people that don't have 20 million followers, where they can have someone that's as invested in them as the big names do, because we really have grown to love this medium. Like I got into this wanting to make short films and do video and things like that, and I kind of originally wrote podcasting off as nothing, but through the years it's really grown into something that we're passionate about, and we wanted to help other people that are passionate about it become the best that they can be. So that's when we created RRPN, the Rum Runners Podcast Network, as it is now, or as we like to call it, the RRPN family, because it's all about family.
Family is important, and I think I have permission to say this from the other guys. I know Devin's not here, Ryan's here, so I think we're ready to announce You Have to Watch This Podcast is joining the RRPN family.
We are so much better for having you.
We are excited to become part of this community of podcasters and content creators. We've already contributed a bit. I know Devin's working on some stuff for you guys. But going forward, we are going to be a Rum Runners Podcast Network podcast. So we have some rebranding things coming soon. The show itself is going to stay the same. If you're watching us live on, if you're watching us live, the show is going to stay the same. Our content's not going to change. Devin's going to be in town here in a few weeks, so we're going to take that opportunity to update our headshots and do some new art and incorporate the RPN logo in. But it's an exciting change. I'm looking forward to it. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to do to be there to help out other people as well. Other people on the network. So that's going to be a good thing. And I don't know. I mean, Alan, when you and I started this, we were in a like an attached shed.
Yeah.
To your place, in the freezing cold because there's no insulation in there.
Yeah.
We started it there with a laptop, and now we're joining a network.
Yeah. We've come a long way in 6 years.
Yeah.
Because we're coming up on our 6-year anniversary next month.
Yeah.
So we got to do something big for that. Maybe that'll be our live show when Devin's in town. We'll celebrate a little bit early.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll figure something out.
That would be amazing.
But part of us being part of the RRPN network is we have our own website. So I just posted that in the chat here on Twitch. I don't have it on Facebook, but just go to rumrunnaspodcastnetwork.com and you can find all of the shows listed there, including us. Our site's not quite up to date yet. They're still working on it, which is fine. It's a work in progress. They got some cool things coming for us. So make sure you check out Rum Runners Podcast, and we'll pitch it again at the end of the show. But yeah, so that's the business we had to take care of at the top of the show. So
super exciting.
Super exciting. And Devin says he's super excited too, but he's probably sleeping because it's late where he is. I think
it's insane, the time difference.
Yeah. I mean, we usually do the show. We're usually done with the show by now. My wife was like, "Are you even podcasting tonight? Like, what's going on?" I was like, "Devin's not on, so we don't have to worry about time constraints." She's like, "Oh, got it."
Yeah.
But we love Devin. We love having him here on the show. Like, we're just teasing. Like, it's I don't mind doing a permanent addition. No, but depending on how tonight goes, we'll probably have you back at some point. So we'll see.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
We'll see. Depends on what you bring to the show. So let's get right into that then. So before we get
game time,
before we get into today's main topic, we usually do a segment where we ask each other, "What have you been watching?" Like just any TV shows, movies, things that you've been watching recently that you want to talk about. Jared, do you have anything that you've been watching?
Yes, actually, it's something that I've been insanely excited for the past 2 years now, because I've been following the production of it since the inception of the idea, which is The Legend of Vox Machina, which is the Critical Role Twitch and YouTube, the Critical Role company. They broke records in funding an animated show that was supposed to only be, like a 2-episode thing, and it turned into an entire season. And it's, it's on Amazon. It's incredible. It's D&D brought to the screen in a way that is actually D&D, and it doesn't feel like, oh, a bunch of Hollywood writers, let's figure out what these Dungeons and Dragons nerds really like. It's real people that really love the game doing it in a way that people are like, yeah, I could see that happening, and it's amazing. I love it.
So I haven't heard much about this. It keeps popping up on my feed though. I'm not a huge D&D guy. Like I've played a few Star Wars role-playing games. I've never done D&D proper. Yeah. But this, like I've heard this compared to Guardians of the Galaxy with like Lord of the Rings elements type stuff. Is that accurate?
I'd say, yeah, probably. I mean, everyone made the joke when Guardians of the Galaxy came out that they were like, this is basically just a D&D campaign. Like these characters, these archetypes are just what people are like, and I'm a tree and I'm a talking raccoon. It's just the kind of things that people throw out there. But it does have that sense of fun. It is an adult cartoon. not in the overly sexy way, but I mean there is some, but it's an adult. It doesn't hold back, so it wasn't, you know, a lot of the times when you're playing D&D, profanity's flying around, you know, people's heads are exploding. Like you're describing things how you, as, you know, a teenager or, you know, a young adult or an adult, how you were like, if I'm actually doing this, I want it to be real, and real life is dirty and real life is dark and real life is adult most of the time. So they didn't shy away from that. So it has that fun, the adult humor. So it's not watering anything down. And honestly, it's animated extremely well. It's done by Titmouse, and Titmouse did an incredible job animating it. It's great.
Okay. Have you done D&D?
Actually, hilariously, no, never have. Growing up, we actually, on our show Talk Shonen, we had an entire episode about this. Growing up, I had a lot of friends that were like, "Ew, nerd thing. Why would you even bring that up?" And I was really into like conforming, so I would just be like, yeah, I know it's really stupid, right? Like this is really dumb that I even talked about this thing. I just wanted to make fun of it too. That's totally what it was. So I never actually got to do it. And then like my social anxiety kicked in as I got older, so that it was like I don't want to meet new people.
Yeah.
I kind of just want to do it with friends. So I never got to do it, but it was through Critical Role actually that I started like really diving deep into what it was. And I have invested hundreds of hours. Like I've seen they're on their third campaign on their stream. I'm like up to date on their third campaign. I've watched hundreds of each campaign of D&D being played, and then on my own time I create characters, I research, I read through the Dungeon Master's Guide, I read through all the editions and the erratas, and I follow the news, and I like, so I'm big into Dungeons and Dragons. I have just never gotten to play it, and fingers crossed on the network we're trying to do some stuff to remedy that. So hopefully.
Well, if you need help with said stuff, let us know. Because
I
Ryan and I aren't too far from Allentown. But okay. No, I kind of want to check this one out. Ryan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm like Jared, is in I've never really played D&D. I've always been like somewhat interested in it, just because of like, you know, some people get really into it and they like paint their own models, and they have like castles setups and, you know, like blueprints of like a countryside. But then you've got other people that just use like a paperclip for their character, and that's it. And I really find that aspect of D&D interesting. But I've never really gotten into it. Okay. So, but I mean, I find it interesting, and I particularly like the memes that I've come across when it comes to people that play D&D and the stuff they post online. I find extremely funny. So,
memes aplenty.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my goal for this year is to start like be part of a D&D campaign. So we'll see what happens. Ryan, have you watched anything this past week?
Yes, a very interesting movie that I was sucked into by my wife called Books of Blood. Very, very, very nice title. It's a horror movie, obviously, as you can tell by the poster.
Really?
It is set up. It's got 3 stories going on all at the same time, and the characters in each story, their stories overlap each other, but not all at the same time. So it's not like you've got these 3 separate narratives and then everyone is like points to each other in the sorry, my computer's talking to me. Remind me tomorrow. I can't. Okay, there we go.
It's Judgment Day.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's not like you have 3 characters or these like 7 characters all meeting in a room at the same time. Like, you've got their stories going on and they overlap at different times. But there's a reason why at the end that they all come together, and you as you understand that reasoning. And I don't really feel bad for anything that happens to anyone in this movie, which is great.
Okay.
I mean, I'm definitely putting it on the list to have you guys watch at some point. So
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm down for that.
Is it like one of these those overly gory, or is there a lot more psychological? Like what is it
It's
hitting on?
kind of what my wife described it as, like if you took Stephen King and who's another like horror author who was different, like it's got like Stephen King suspense mixed with oh crap, I should have written it down. Oh well.
I don't know why, but the first author that popped in my head as horror was J.K. Rowling.
But you know, it's not really gory. It's funny because I've for you know like we've watched this segment. I've done like 2 horror films like 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Now, and I've really enjoyed both of them, and both of them were like semi-low budget Canadian films.
Those are the best.
And I think I'm going to explore this because even though the storyline was different and it was a completely different like setup, there were still aspects of it film-wise that I really liked, and I think that might be a thing.
I feel like Hulu's done a really good job of getting horror movies. Well, like Netflix has all the rom-coms, Hulu's done the horror films. Because I just saw a trailer before the show for a movie called No Exit, about these people who get snowed in at a like visitor center, and like Dennis Haysbert, who's the Allstate guy and was the president on 24, is in it, and that was enough to get me intrigued. But like, it didn't look horrible. I'm like, this kind of looks good. Like, I'll check this out, and it's on Hulu. So
yeah.
All right, so check that out. And for my topic, we're gonna get into some spoiler territory for Book of Boba Fett, because I've got some thoughts about last week's episode, and not necessarily about the episode itself, but with the fan base around the episode. Because
it should be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be.
As I was watching the episode, I'm aware that our co-host Devin has not been watching Book of Boba Fett. He's behind on it. He's been busy with work. So I told Devin, I was like, hey, I've got a homework assignment for you. And hopefully he does this before the next time he's on the show.
He better.
I told Devin, don't watch the first 4 episodes of Book of Boba Fett. Just jump to episode 5 and then watch Book of Boba Fett. Because episode 5, I am sorry, is not an episode of Book of Boba Fett. It is season 3, episode 1 of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, this is probably some of the best Star Wars I have seen in years. And I loved every second of it, but it's not the show I signed up for. Which is a weird choice for me. Like, I don't know what the plan is now. Like, I don't know what tomorrow's episode of Boba Fett's going to look like. It just was a real hard turn for me, and I enjoyed. No, don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the episode. It felt weird that they did this turn, but also like everyone on the internet, it's like Book of Boba Fett's been getting mixed reviews from Star Wars fans, because Star Wars fans can't like anything just outright.
They're never happy.
They're never happy. And I don't think this episode helped at all, because everyone's like, this is the best episode because Boba's not in it. Like, that, you're liking this for all the wrong reasons. And that's my problem with it. Like, it's a great episode. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely love it. But Book of Boba Fett, it might not be what you want from this character, but the character's evolving. Ryan, what was that meme you shared earlier?
You know what? I'm just going to go back and just read it, because it's harsh and it needs to be. So,
Jared, what are your thoughts on episode 5
on the Book of Boba as a whole, or just the last episode?
As a whole, last episode. So I've been enjoying the show.
Yeah, like Boba Fett has, for literally my entire life, been my favorite character. I was one of those kids that like saw it and went, that is the coolest guy that I've ever seen. So he's my favorite now. So like I've always had a sweet spot for Boba. which is why when The Mandalorian came out, I was so pumped because I was like, this is what I always wanted because I didn't get Boba Fett, so now I'm going to get someone new. As a whole, I've liked the show. Even the episodes that people hated, like, you know, a lot of people gave hate to like episode 3 when the Mod Squad came out. I loved it. I think that their bikes irritated me just because of how clean they were. I think if they would have made them dirtier, it would have fit. They could have still been colorful. They still could have been like all hooked up, but I feel like it just needed the grunge of Tatooine.
Yeah.
But at the same point, maybe that's why they were stealing water just to clean their bikes, which kind of makes them even more of, you know, D-bags. But yeah, like I think that the most recent episode was extremely well done. It was I mean, it was what Bryce what's her name?
Bryce Dallas Howard.
Bryce Dallas Howard. I almost called her Dylan. Bryce Dallas Howard. She did an incredible job with it. It was very well directed. She does great on pretty much every episode that she's done in, you know, Star Wars. So I think it was really well done. I feel like it helped move the overall story of where like that universe is going really, really well. I think it definitely, there were some things that as like a Star Wars nerd, I was picking up on where I was like, I see how this ties into Boba. Because I'm in the camp where I'm like, I don't think Din's going to have the Darksaber for the entire, I don't think he's going to end with it. And I think that's what Book of Boba is leading to. I think it's trying to tell this slow burn story of someone not just starting a crime family, but learning how to be a leader more than anything else. And which is what Mandalorians need. Mandalorians need a leader. So it's him becoming a leader using all of his past experiences. The issue is that the pacing of it is not as fast as everybody wants. Everybody wants shootout, pew, pew, pew. Now I got a lightsaber, pew, pew, pew. Cool new creature. You know, give me BD, which I loved the BD droid. That was amazing. But, you know, everybody wants that nostalgia kick. They want the action. It's like sometimes you just need to take a step back, especially in Star Wars, and look at, you know, the galaxy as a whole and see where everything's going. And I think this episode didn't help with the toxic fans, but I think like fans that are really, really, really into where Star Wars is going, this is what they needed. They needed an outside perspective on, you know, who's going to be riding the Mythosaur. You know, who, you know, you have Boba trying to ride a Rancor. It's another big creature. You know, is there parallels that can be drawn? He has the Mythosaur as you know, the family symbol. Something is happening, and I think that it was needed to tell an outside perspective, especially because of everyone's negative opinion on Boba in his own dang show.
Yeah, and that's where the meme that I sent Alan and Devin earlier today, and it's a picture of Boba and a picture of Luke from, you know, being old man Luke, and it says that awkward moment when your favorite character experiences development and now you cannot relate because they have matured and you are a man-child incapable of human growth or betterment. And I'm sorry if that's harsh to certain people, but as far as I'm concerned, it's true. You've got a character, and Jared, you even said he had what, maybe 4 lines, 4 words, phrases in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, he had 6 minutes of total like screen time for the most part.
And he was mute for most of it. So I mean, you've got a character that just looked cool, and then you've got a lot of people, a very small percentage, and I just want to get this clear: a small percentage of people who studied and read the expanded universe books in the 80s, 90s, and right before the prequels came out, and that small majority was introduced to a character that, yes, was really cool in those books. The problem is that the character in the expanded universe, in the EU at this point, is no longer canon. And the character of Boba that is canon is the one that didn't say or do a thing, and in fact got knocked off a sand barge by a blind man into a Sarlacc pit. That's who we're talking about here. And Alan felt the same way I did about the guy. Like, yeah, okay, he looks cool, but what else is there about the character?
Boba Fett was never one of those characters I got really into. What got me into him was his episode of The Mandalorian where he just comes in and starts kicking Stormtrooper ass.
I'm not gonna lie, I like cried a little bit during that episode. That was like everything I've been waiting for my whole life.
Yeah, it was him coming in there, and I guess if you look at it this way, I didn't think about this until I just said that. I guess if you got a Boba Fett episode of The Mandalorian, I guess Mando's owed a episode of Boba Fett to make up for that. So
it's like symbiotic at this point.
Yeah,
it's like they go together.
Yeah, and that's where like my whole thing on this is I like Book of Boba Fett so far. I like what they're doing to him because they're taking someone who was a bounty hunter, granted a good bounty hunter, and now he's learning how to be a leader. And guess what? There's going to be bumps in the road. He's going to do embarrassing things. He's going to make himself look like a fool because that's how you grow. And I'm sorry if people don't like seeing their favorite character do that, but I mean, it's the same thing. Anakin in Clone Wars, Episode 2, that's a pretty good depiction of how awkward it can be as a male teenager. Just putting it out there.
I think we need to move on.
Yeah. I agree, though. I agree. I definitely agree.
I'm looking forward to the rest of the Book of Boba Fett or season 2.5 of The Mandalorian, whatever we're getting next from Disney Plus. I'm here for it all.
The two more episodes that we have.
Yeah, if we get an episode about Mando in every Disney Plus Star Wars show going forward, though, I'll be a little bit more upset. Like if he just shows up for like
a Sokatano.
Yeah, like. And that, or like even in the Obi-Wan show, like it's baby Mando going around with that little helmet on his head. That'll be a little weird, but I'm fine with what we got. It's not what I expected, and I was disappointed in a lot of the fan base. So let's move on to today's main topic. When we have a guest here on the show, we have them make us a list of films for us to choose from that they want to talk about, that one of us hasn't seen.
I hope you enjoyed my list.
There was a great list. The one that we ended up picking was a film that I had never seen before, and that is My Cousin Vinny, starring Joe Pesci, Ralph Macchio, Marissa Tomei, and Herman Munster.
Yeah. I'm so glad you said that. It gets overlooked so much.
So Jared, tell us a little bit about why you picked this film.
Well, My Cousin Vinny is legitimately in my top 5 films of all time. I think that if you just look at it as a film, as a story, there's very little that you can pick apart in it to be like, I didn't like that. You know, I as a huge fan still have some things where I'm like, I don't like that much. But as a whole, there's no holes. There's nothing that's extremely weak about it. It's funny. It's witty. It moves at a very good pace. I think it captures what it was trying to capture in that courtroom drama, but not in a boring kind of way, which is what I think they were going for. But it's always been a movie that anytime it's on, I will watch it. If I'm going through, streaming apps and I go, there's a million things on here, what am I going to watch? Probably going to throw on My Cousin Vinny because I've loved it since the moment that I saw it.
Ryan, you had seen the film before, right?
Yeah, I have. I saw it, the first time I saw it was when I was in college, I believe, either late high school or college. And I don't really remember, prior to watching it for the show, obviously, I didn't really remember anything from the beginning of the movie, except for like the main premise and like the middle part of the movie. All I remembered was the courtroom scene at the end, which has got to be one of my favorite courtroom scenes of any movie that has to deal with like the law or anything. Like it's definitely my favorite. And then rewatching it for this, it was kind of like watching it for the first time again for like the first, for the start and the middle of the film. And I really enjoyed it. There was one thing that I had to skip, and I'll get into that later.
Okay.
But it was definitely a good film. I still think the ending's the strongest part of it, though.
Okay. Jared, do you remember the first time you saw this film?
Oh my God. I can't remember exactly. I do remember that I was probably, because of the language, too young to actually be watching that film. My dad had a weird rule in the house, which was, if you want to watch it, you can watch it. Rating meant nothing. So if there was, if there was cursing, if there was gore, it's why I'm really not cool with dolls to this day, because he let me watch Child's Play at like 7 years old. So I watched it. I think I was probably like 10, 11 years old, and I just remember going, that is one of the most. I was like, that guy can talk anybody into anything. I thought that as a child. I was like, that guy. I wanted to be like him, like charismatically, because I remember just being like, that guy is the best talker I've ever seen in my life. Of course, I would go on to see, tons of great characters that are very charismatic, but Vinny is still up there.
Okay. So I really enjoyed this film. I think Joe Pesci is fantastic. The only comedies I really know him from are the Home Alone films, and that's more slapsticky.
Very different.
But this is like the middle ground between the slapstick of Home Alone and then like the wise guy of Goodfellas, which I really enjoy. I could watch like a whole TV show of just him being Vinny. Like I would just love more of this.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the courtroom stuff. I think it did a really good job of balancing the courtroom with comedy and drama. I have questions about awards this film won, but overall I really enjoyed it. So
yeah, plus Marissa Tomei.
Yeah, well let's get into Marissa Tomei a bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like to think that this is the story of her life that she never likes to tell Peter about. So as far as I'm concerned, this is an MCU movie.
So
you said so Joe Pesci is Uncle Ben?
Yes, Joe Pesci's Uncle
Vin.
Yeah, he's Uncle Vin.
With great power comes great gabagoo. So Marissa
for the youth.
Yeah. So Marissa Tomei won the Oscar for best supporting actress.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I always knew that about this film. I looked up the other performance. I'm trying to figure out why she won it, because it's not that she gives a bad performance. It's just compared to other Oscar winning performances, it's nothing that really stands out as spectacular. But is it just because she talks about cars a lot? Is that why she won it? Like, can you give me any insight into this?
What were the other ones? Like,
I don't know who they were up against.
Yeah.
I have to pull it up. Give me a second here.
Okay.
I mean, for me, whenever I look at Marissa Tomei's performance in My Cousin Vinny, I feel like she took a character that should have been very difficult to portray. Someone who is a gorgeous, very feminine, very self-aware, very self-confident tomboy mechanic who's also an out-of-work hairdresser. Mm-hmm. And it should, like, there was levels to her, to her character that should have been difficult to portray, because I feel like it was probably written to come off as overly, almost like a caricature of people from like that time, that neighborhood, that were kind of similar, and she made it look effortless. She didn't seem like she was acting for the entire time. It was like, that's what Marissa Tomei was actually always like, and everything else you saw her in was actually her acting. Okay. That's how it felt.
Okay. So the other nominees that year were Vanessa Redgrave for Howard's End, Miranda Richardson for Damage, Judy Davis for Husband and Wives, and Joan Plowright for Enchanted April. And I guess out of all of those, Marissa Tomei is the one that stands out today. Still, like, when you look back at all of these, the one that's recognizable, regardless of winning it, it's Marissa Tomei and My Cousin Vinny. So I think that nomination does stand the test of time. This was also the year that Al Pacino won for Scent of a Woman, where he started the hoo-ha, like that Al Pacino. Yeah. So the Academy also just might have been a little wacky that year. Because from what I understand, like that was Pacino's career achievement award. Like we're just gonna give it to Pacino now. So
yeah. Well, I know for me in this, the one thing that stood out to me is I feel like she made Joe Pesci's character better. I feel because of how well she worked her character to bounce off him, and I feel like if she wouldn't have been able to portray her character as naturally as she did, then his character would have came off more cartoonish than what it actually did. Because at first you're just like, okay, these are just two stereotyped New Yorkers from, Brooklyn or Bronx or I forget if they even mention where they're from in New York, but they're just supposed to be two stereotypes, and then they build characters through those through them, and that's where you run the risk of turning a character like Vinny and his fiance into cartoon characters instead of actual people, and her performance was able to balance him out. And I mean, I'm happy that she won that award for it, because I mean, like you wouldn't think that she spoke any other way.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best ways of describing it. I think because she didn't win like best actress, like best leading actress, and she did win best supporting, I think that the word supporting is the most important thing and the reason why she won. Because I feel like without her, the movie falls flat. And that's what you want from a really good supporting actor or actress. You want someone that without them, if you take them away, the movie is completely different. It completely changes, and it's not going to live up to the potential that it has.
Yeah.
And so I think that probably added into why she won that.
Not to mention, you take her out of the movie, Karate Kid gets the chair.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I also didn't know what this felt like. What I knew it was revolved around the court case. I didn't know what the court case was. I didn't know who was involved. I did not expect Ralph Macchio in this until I pulled it up, and it's like Ralph Macchio is second billed. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know it was about a murder case. I thought it was something like for some reason I thought Vinny was defending himself. But I didn't know what the court case was, so I was intrigued by the murder. It's like, wait, so who actually did it? Because they never actually show you the actual murderers. It's you hear about them like later on in the film, but I was like, so wait, what's actually going on here? Like I was kind of like it strung me along enough that I was like, okay, so like if we know they didn't do it, so how? Like what is all this evidence and how does this play out? Like it was really intriguing to me, like just like from a legal standpoint, like how they built the case like against these two guys that we know are innocent.
Yeah, it kind of was like if you really think about it in like a universal way, it was like a comedy of errors almost, where it's like everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. It was very Murphy's Law. It's like there just so happen to be two guys that just so happen to kind of look like you, that just so happen to be driving a vehicle the same color, the same. It's like the fact that happened is hilariously ironic.
Yeah.
And the scene where the sheriff is questioning them, I think the fact that you didn't know that there was a murder, it just kind of happened. It made you feel like you were learning it with the character. Just be like, is that when you shot him? You shot him because he caught you? Because over the tuna fish? And he's just like, what?
I shot him?
It's like, you shot the clerk. I shot the clerk. I shot the clerk. And I love the fact that they use that later on in the case. Like, when you say it with a different inflection, it sounds like he's admitting to murder.
Yeah, and I think that's
shot the clerk, but I did not shoot the manager.
I wasn't even supposed to be here today. I think that's why Aunt May knows to tell Peter not to say anything without a lawyer in No Way Home.
I'm telling you, My Cousin Vinny is a prequel MCU movie.
I would have loved to have seen, like, I love how No Way Home actually did it, but I would have loved to have seen Joe Pesci just walk through and just be playing Vinny as the lawyer. That would have been great.
And then Aunt May just gives him the stink eye. He just
No, Joe Pesci as Daredevil. Like I just want to see that now. Like,
oh man, that's the Matt Murdock everybody needed.
yeah, actually no. I think if you cast Joe Pesci as anyone in the Marvel universe, it would have to be Wolverine, right?
I mean, he's got the height for it.
Yeah,
it's true. He does have the height for it.
He's got the height and the predisposition for anger. So,
yeah,
it's a good fit.
Punisher.
Just give him some mutton chops.
I'm sorry, but Joe Pesci to me, whenever anybody talks about Joe Pesci, when I see Joe Pesci, I just think about the one George Carlin joke where he's talking about getting crap done, and he's like, all you need to do is give me Joe Pesci and a baseball bat, and you could solve any problem.
It's true. It's so true.
Is this your guys' favorite Joe Pesci performance?
Oh, yeah. Hands down for me.
There was another movie that flashed in my head when we were talking about that earlier, and I'm trying to remember what it was. So my favorite Joe Pesci thing he did, which is more just him playing on his own stereotype than it is him acting, was from when he guest starred in a Lethal Weapon movie. Particularly his monologue when he's talking about the drive-thru. That's my favorite thing that he's ever done, but I have to say this is probably his best performance out of stuff that I've seen.
They brought him into to Lethal Weapon at the point where sorry, we're getting things in the chat that I don't think we should be. They brought him into Lethal Weapon because The Odd Couple wasn't enough of Danny Glover. I almost said Donald Glover. Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. You had to add a third element movie with Joe Pesci. Is it though?
If Donald Glover was in it?
Yeah. It's not that different. They're not related.
I feel like he can do it. He can probably pull it off. I can see him just being like, I'm too old for this shit.
Yeah.
Even though he's young.
So Jared, any other questions you had for us about
what you thought about the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, here's a big one for me because I told you that there were some things that I didn't like. And I think that this is one of the weaknesses. What did you think about Ralph Macchio's performance in the movie?
Ralph Macchio. What character was he again?
He was Vinny's cousin, the one that was being tried for murder.
Yeah. To be honest, I didn't really focus on them that much. I mean, like, even though yes, they're the ones that start the story and they're the ones that are on the hook, I feel like this is more Joe Pesci's movie and his relationship with his fiance. So I really didn't really think about their roles or how well they were doing it. I mean, honestly, they could have just shown up and played themselves. And it really wouldn't have changed the movie for me.
So they don't really give him much to do in this. I think the most interesting thing they have is like the dynamic. So his buddy wants to move on to a different lawyer, but Ralph Macchio has like a loyalty to family that he can't really break, and he's trying. Like he knows that Vinny's messing up, and he's conflicted on what to do next. And I really appreciated that for the character, like that story. But beyond that, there wasn't really much for him. It's not like he's sweeping the leg or anything in this. I'm going to make as many Karate Kid jokes as I can in this.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's good.
Until you guys tell me to wax off. But beyond that, like he's just kind of there and just kind of reacting to like the comedy of errors that he's in the middle of.
Yeah. See, I thought honestly, I mean, I don't have anything against Ralph Macchio. I loved The Karate Kid. You know, it's a great movie. But I love Cobra Kai. It's another great show. Pretty much anything where he's kicking people, I like. But in this one, honestly, I felt like his performance just and as a whole, up until I would say the interrogation scene, um, the scene where he's trying to defend Vinny and explain like the magic, like it's like, oh, it's under the table. Oh, he's palming it. Oh, there's a wire and it goes through his thing. And like that scene was okay. And then the end when he gives him the hug. Other than that, I thought that they were some of his weakest performances of things that I've seen him in. Where I was just like, I don't really feel anything. Your friend is kind of stealing the show with how I felt like he was constantly being one-upped by the other people that were on the screen, and he didn't really hold his own in anything.
I think the peak of his performance in this is the most pivotal line of dialogue in the whole thing, where he says, "My cousin Vinny." Like after that, like once he says the title of the film, it just kind of plateaus from there, and you don't really you don't get much more Macchio after that.
Yeah. He said the thing. He said the thing.
Yeah. Every time that happens, though, I just hear Peter Griffin. They said it. Like the only way I can save the day is to be Superman 4: The Quest for Peace.
Yep. Yeah.
There's a lot of actors in here I recognize from other things. We talked about it.
The prosecutor was his son-in-law.
The prosecutor I know as he was Perry White on The Adventures of Superman and Lois, and the evil coach in The Mighty Ducks. Like he's Bombay's old coach.
Yeah, the coach of the Hawks.
Yeah, and then the sheriff I recognize from a bunch of stuff. I want to say
he's one of those guys that's like, I've seen him in something before, and you try to put your finger on it.
Yeah, he's been in like an episode of everything.
It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like I've seen him in almost everything I've ever seen, but I don't know who it is.
He has a number in every single thing that he's ever been in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want to say a film that I think he was in, but I don't want to get it wrong, so I'm scrolling through to make sure. Yeah, he was in Black Sheep. He played like the governor's assistant.
Oh yeah, the guy who at the end was like threw under the bus.
Yeah, so I recognized him from that, but then I wanted to get it out. I had something to put in the background behind, but I just didn't get a chance to. How do you say his last name? Fred Gwynn, is that right? Herman Munster.
Yes, yeah.
He's the judge, and I absolutely love him in this film. He's such a great antagonist to Vinny, but like also like neutral. Like he has to be neutral to the whole thing because he's a judge. Yeah. But he also comes off so hostile to Vinny, and I absolutely love that because this is a guy who's known for playing Herman Munster on the Munsters and writing children's books. Like I don't know if you know this, but he wrote children's books as part of his career. Yeah, we have one. I don't know where it is. I meant to ask my wife to get it for me before we did the show to put it behind me. Because that's like the only piece of memorabilia for this movie that I have. It's hard for me to find something for a film that I've never seen, but I had something and I forgot to get it out. So,
well, that man is able to give the best, like, intrigued, confused look that I've seen of any actor on screen, especially when he was like trying to figure out like where Vinny was going throughout the entire last half of like the courtroom scene, and he's just kind of sitting there going, this is actually happening. This fool is actually turning into a great lawyer. Like
that line where they're like, I want to see where this is going. He's like, so do I.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind bit. I can get into the thing that I really wasn't a fan of if you want.
I have a feeling I know what it's going to be, and I had a feeling you were going to bring this up on the show.
Yeah, so I'm fine with a lot of humor. I am. And I'm fine with humor that like has to do with like poking fun at certain things.
Okay.
But I did not, and I feel like, granted, it's like it's the early 90s, late 80s, so I kind of get it, but
I think I know where you're going with this too now.
yeah, the whole joke about the other lawyer not being able to like talk, and he was like stuttering and stammering like crazy when he was trying to like do his thing.
Yeah.
There are other ways to show a lawyer being incompetent than like making a joke out of something that people can't control. So it's one of those things, like, as soon as he was trying to talk, and I did maybe like 20 seconds of him trying to like do his like opening speech, I grabbed my Xbox controller and I like paged through like the different scenes. I'm like, okay, when does this end? And then I picked it up as soon as he was walking back. And then when he did it again, I did the same thing. So I don't even know what he was trying to say, but I wasn't about to sit through that.
Yeah, and I think for the listeners at home, we should say why you have a problem with that, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, no. I mean, I stutter. I mean, I do it on here, and it's one of those things that like, it's really tough. Like, I went to speech therapy all through school. I did outside speech therapy, as in like outside of the school system, when I was like from the age of 4 till like 10. And then from there, I did speech therapy in school until I graduated. And it helped, but at a certain point, it's almost like stuttering is like being born with a bad limb. Like, it's something you learn how to live with, but like, if you have a bad arm and you can't throw a baseball, regardless of how much you train, you're never going to be able to throw a baseball. As much as I practice, I'm always going to stutter occasionally. Sometimes it's going to be really bad. Sometimes I can speak fluently like I am right now.
Don't jinx it.
Yeah, I know. Believe me, I'm kind of tense right now because it's probably going to happen. But it's one of those things that, like, I get why at a certain point people did that for like humor's sake. But looking back on it now, and people can say that whatever, I'm too sensitive or what, I don't care. There are certain things that just,
it hits close to home.
It hits way too close to home, and that's why I was like, okay, I'm just gonna page through the scenes until I get to where he's walking away, and then go from there.
Yeah, so, and it was really played up. Also, I will say that like it was not just normal stutter. Like, he was spitting over people, grabbing people, and pulling them uncomfortably close to to his face.
Yeah.
It was. I will say, it was definitely I feel like a product of the times, where they were like, no one's gonna care if we put this in here. Let's just crank it up to, like, I think a lot of things in this movie, they cranked it up to 11. And we're just like, let's just, people will laugh at this. Not really thinking of, well, what about the people who aren't going to laugh at that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, just, and I'm not calling for the movie to be changed. No, just leave it the way it is. It's fine the way it is. It's okay. It's just, it's one of those things where me personally, it's like, I'll watch this movie again without a problem. I'm not watching those scenes, but I'll watch this movie. And I'll watch.
Yeah. And
I know exactly when to take your bathroom break.
Exactly.
And it's nice that they have that built in for you. Just touching quick on the stutter thing. We talked a bit earlier about us doing the show for 6 years. In those 6 years, Ryan, like, from when we started till now, like, it's like day and night.
Yeah, and
you've gotten so much
helped.
Yeah, you've gotten so much more comfortable in front of a microphone, and it's impressive. So I just want to give you kudos, Jared.
Thank you.
I got nothing for you. I'm sorry. So is there a recurring joke in this that you guys enjoyed a lot? Like a favorite recurring joke?
I mean, for me, like, I know, like, my favorite part is the whole biological clock thing. My biological clock ticking like this, and Vinny repeats it. But as far as like recurring, jokes, I'd probably say it's the banter between Vinny and Marissa Tomei, is Mona Lisa, where they would just go down these tangents. They just get more and more specific, like the broken sink thing, which just ends. And I'll use the one curse word where it just it's like I used a particular torque wrench that was verified by NASA to be correct within a thousandth of a degree of error. He's like, well, I guess it's fucking broken then. Like, just like those strings of dialogue were just amazing, and they're always some of my favorite stuff from it. Just hearing them go back and forth like that.
Ryan, how about you?
Mine's got to be, after rewatching it and seeing everything, mine's got to be the whole dress code thing.
Okay.
I mean, like him never getting it right, and then the judge calls him out for wearing the like bellhop tuxedo thing that's like three sizes too big than him, and then he has to explain himself in the court, and then it's never spoken about again.
For me, it's the guy from the pool hall who owes them $200 and keeps trying to pay them. And like Vinny's always like, that's not, how do I know that's not just a $20 bill wrapped around a bunch of ones? And then when he finally gives him the money, Vinny's just like, he's like, you want to fight now? And then Vinny just like tackles him and beats him. I was like, that was like the perfect payoff for that.
And especially with him being covered in mud.
Yeah, and it followed the rule of threes, which I thought was great. Like you see them at the pool hall at first, and he has the wad of money, then he actually has the money, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. So I really liked the delivery of that joke and just like the setup of that. Anything else on My Cousin Vinny before we wrap this up?
No, I think I feel like I gushed about the movie just right off the bat, and the more I hear people talk about it, the more I'm reminded why it is in my top 5, because like I'm a big fan of movies. Like I love cinema. It's one of the things that, like, growing up, it's what I always had to look forward to, was watching movies, especially since I didn't have that restriction of ratings. So like, for something to get to my top 5, it has to be it has to be good. Like it actually has to be a good movie. And I feel like this delivers. When the first time you watch it, it's a great movie. The 100th time you watch it, it's still a great movie.
I will say this is one of the best courtroom comedies I've ever seen. It is not my favorite. Ryan, can you guess what my favorite is?
Let's see.
It's not. It's not popping in my head right now. I'm sorry.
Okay. Jared, do you want to take a guess? Another courtroom comedy?
Courtroom comedy.
Have we done it on the show?
I can't even think about another courtroom comedy.
We haven't, no. It's Liar Liar. Liar Liar is my favorite.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
that is a great one.
Yeah, in your bra. I need to rewatch that. It's been a while. All right, Jared, where can people find Rum Runnas Podcast?
All right, well, you can find the Rum Runnas Podcast everywhere that you find your podcasts. We are on everything. As we stated, though, the best place to find Rum Runnas Podcast, Dark Rum, Talk Shonen, Norwal's Nightmares, the Lehigh Valley Food Podcast, You Have to Watch This Podcast, Chungus Cast, Senpai Kohai, all the things that we do is going to be on the Rum Runnas Podcast Network.com. That's RUMRUNNASPODCASTNETWORK. It's really difficult when you spell it out. .com.
Yeah.
And we have everything there.
All right.
So yeah, that's really the best place to find us. And Rum Runnas on everything else, or RRPN. If you just Google that, we're what pops up.
Yeah, we put the link here in the chat. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll also put it in the description for you. You can find You Have to Watch This Podcast on all major podcasting platforms. We're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitch. If you're watching here on Twitch, go ahead and hit that follow button. If you're watching here on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Next week, I believe it'll be Ryan's pick. Devin should be back from his vacation because the holidays weren't long enough ago for him, so he needed another vacation. So, Ryan, what are you going to have me and Devin watch next week?
Well, it's a toss-up. Okay. Well, no, it's not really a toss-up because I'm working towards my revenge for MacGruber, and I'm also doing the Predator storyline now for you guys. Since I just did Predator, I think I'm going to jump over and we're going to do prep for my revenge. So we're going to be watching Wall Street.
Okay. All right.
So,
on a side note, I watched several episodes of the MacGruber TV show. Don't know if I can recommend it. It's not it. It's tiring, like episode after episode. It's just the same thing, and I've seen enough.
Is there a tiger roar every time there's an explosion?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't been paying that much attention.
Picking that out is finding every time there was an explosion, there is a tiger roar.
I will have
every single time.
I will have to keep an ear out for that. I will say Billy Zane is a good villain. But I have seen way too much of Will Forte's ass. But on that note, for you, thank you again, Jared, for joining us this week on the show. Like we said,
having me.
Devin will be back next week. Go check out Rum Runnas Podcast Network.com for more podcast stuff, including coming soon. You have to watch this podcast. For you have to watch this podcast. I'm Alan.
I'm Ryan.
And for Rum Runnas, I'm Jared.
And we are three Utes signing off until next week. Bye.